back to Sloth Speed Travel, and again, we are a early retirement couple that's doing slow travel and experiencing the world in our early retirement years. And we're going to be taking off on our big trip, in our first long-term travel event. Will begin in early February. But we didn't want to wait that long to sort of kick the tires on some of our processes and testing out how we're going to actually travel and how we're going to pack our bags. And so we had all these ideas, but we needed to see, are they actually going to work? What could we adjust now? And just kind of get a trip under our belts. So this is sort of a preview of what's to come, but we decided to take a shorter trip, and we were looking around for a place to go. And we had a good friend of ours that suggested a city to us, and that suggestion led us to the City of Saints, the City of Festivals, the Gibraltar of North America.
Quebec City.
Quebec City. So that is about a month ago. Yeah, we started planning this probably midsummer, but we didn't put a lot into this. This is about a little over maybe 60 days of planning time, and we kind of just took off on this one just to kind of go try it out.
It was very close to home.
Yep.
Still international, so
Yep.
that tested that, but it's still close to home, so it's sort of safe for that measure.
Yep. So yeah, and Quebec City is kind of known for having that European feel, and it certainly just didn't disappoint in that sense. A lot of old architecture. You get a little bit of language barrier to start getting used to that. So those are some of the things that led us to Quebec, and then we started sort of testing out some of our preps for travel, such as getting money.
Yeah, money, Canadian currency. So how do we do that? We actually ordered it from our bank. So you can go online and you tell them what kind of currency you want, Canadian dollars, and then you order your amount. If it's over a certain amount, you have to go pick it up at the bank. But we ordered just enough to get us by for the week, and they mailed it directly to our home.
And certainly, most places you're going to get by just fine with credit cards, and that was the case in Quebec City. However, it was nice at times having local currency and not having to fight with people at the airport, not having to fight to find ATMs, security issues with withdrawing money from ATMs, you just avoid all that by having a little bit of that country's currency in your pocket when you arrive. So that was one of our preps, and it turned out that we liked being able to do that. So that'll certainly be something, when available to us, that we'll do. But certainly if you showed up with just credit cards in your pocket and even some U.S. dollars in your pocket, you would do just fine up in Quebec and Canada in general. What else did we do prep-wise? Our luggage.
We thought we knew how we were going to try to pack down.
And basically our original plan was to try and do carry-on only. We're still struggling with that part of it right now. I know lots of travelers are out there doing it, and they make it look really easy. And I guess as time goes on, you will get better and better at paring down.
Yeah.
But just that extra pair of shoes,
all the liquids.
Right. We're hitting Quebec City in fall, so this would have been late October or early October rather. And it's just starting to get chilly there. We got lucky with some warm weather, but you had to be prepared for the idea that you might have some chilly evenings. So some hoodies, some bulkier items. And suddenly what you find is when you're having to prepare for both hot weather and cold weather simultaneously, you just need that little extra space. So essentially what we did was do our carry-on setup, and then we brought one extra check bag in the form of like a trunk style suitcase. That kind of worked for this trip, but it's probably not something we're going to do long term. And then what else did we have for prep?
For our future, we're going to be budgeting pretty tightly. This one was a test run, so our budget was a little bit looser on this one. Not as tight. We'll go over budget later with you also, but we weren't trying to conform to a certain budget here.
We'll kind of give you a full cost analysis. This will be a two-part. This will be part one. There'll be a part two, and that part two will give you everything on the cost analysis. But we'll cover costs as we go through here, even in this part one here, just to give you a sense of what things cost just so you have that feel. And then we flew up on Air Canada. It makes sense that if you're going to fly to Canada, pretty much everything that's occurring internally up there is Air Canada flights. There's certainly some other airlines, a little bit of United Airlines, but...
And we had a little bit of last-minute drama with Canada Air because
Yeah.
they were trying to strike.
Trying to strike.
So we didn't know until a couple of days before if we were going to make it up there or
Yep.
not.
But the beauty of slow travel, even though we were on a little bit of a timeline because we're still employed at this point, was the idea that if things get messed up, one of the beauties of slow travel is you're not in a rush to be anywhere. If a flight's delayed, if something happens, I mean, you may get extended in one place, but there's not this sense that I have to get back because I have to get to my job. So one of the beauties is we were able to sort of relax into that and start developing that mindset so that when this drama came up with Air Canada threatening to strike, we were able just to say, well, we'll see what happens. And as it turns out, they worked everything out and we were able to make our flights and get up there. And flying into Quebec City was pretty straightforward. It's a fairly small airport, generally speaking. You exit right off into your baggage claim area, and then literally right through the doors of the baggage claim are where you can catch taxi cabs. You can catch a bus that goes into downtown, and we will go into a little more in depth on the bus system later. But and then of course Uber and ride shares are available right there where you exit as well, which is what we opted to do as well. So we took an Uber into the city center, into the St. Roch area where we had our Airbnb. And that Uber ride was around $39, I believe. We'll put that in the final cost analysis, but not too outrageous. And the airport's a little outside the city, so it's you can definitely use public transportation to get into town, but it's the Uber rides are going to be, generally speaking, around that price point. Taxis are around that same price point. So either way you decide to go, either with the bus system, which would be our second way that we would suggest getting in and out of the airport, Ubering is certainly very easy and was very convenient for us to do. And then we arrived, and Quebec City it's got a lot of history, and it's billed as having a lot of history, and there's sort of two seasons. There's a winter season where they do a lot of winter festival items. We're obviously arriving in the fall, still sort of the tail end of the summer season, kind of starting to get into shoulder season a little bit. And what we figured out really fast was that there are a lot of people visiting at this time of year. So it's still considered cruise ship season, which kind of runs from late spring through early fall. So we were right at sort of getting to the tail end of cruise ship season. And
you could tell the days that the cruise ships came in because the streets were a little bit more crowded than other days. And you can actually see the huge cruise ships from the old town. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and so I think over the course of our time there, we ultimately spend 9 days in Quebec City, but I mean every other day, every 2 days, there's new ships coming in, and they're dumping just thousands of people into this kind of small area, and some days were crowded, some days were less crowded, but you definitely get this sense that Quebec City is still very much a very hot destination, both for cruisers and for locals within Canada that come there, and then certainly U.S. visitors were abundant there as well.
Very international. You heard all sorts of languages being spoken.
Yeah, which adds to the flavor right off the bat. But then there's this veneer thing you start to notice. You've got the crowd of people, and then you have all the typical tourist type destination trappings, the souvenir shops every 2 feet with all the typical souvenir things. Not that we begrudge anybody having a souvenir shop, but sometimes if you go to a place and there's too much of that, it can just feel like, is this a tourist trap? So you get the crowd of people. They've got the umbrella street where you've got these umbrellas hung. Well, that's a really cool thing, but there's 25 cities or plus in the world that have a similar attraction. And then when you really look close at the umbrellas, they're a little bit faded. Are they being kept up? Is it, what are you doing with that? They had a cool thing going on with the These pink guys, again, this is an international thing that's been.
The inflatable pink guys
Inflatable
are
pink
huge.
guys, yeah.
They're all over the old town, Quebec City.
Yep, and they're done by an artist, Philippe Catrin, and they're up. But again, most touristy places that you go to are going to have these kind of art attractions, and it's not that they're not cool, but you just start to get the sense is this just a veneer of a historical place to visit? Is this like the Disneyland of history where there's a shallow veneer and there's really not much depth to it, and you're just going to feel like it's kind of over tourist, and how do we feel about it?
Is it any old city just dressed up?
Right, yeah. And so we're going to kind of go through our time in Quebec, and in the end here, at the end of the video, if you stay to the end, we're going to give you our opinion on whether there was something more to it, or whether it was, is it worth your time to go visit Quebec City, is essentially what we're going to answer. So, but one of the first stops we had along the way, real early on, the very first full day that we were there after we arrived, this is something we'd never done before when we've gone traveling in the past, but we did a walking tour.
Mm-hmm. We had a nice Quebec lady giving us a walking tour, and one of the things that you're going to learn very quickly about Quebec are the stairs and the inclines of Quebec. It is very hilly there. Lots of stairs there.
Yeah, the stairs and the inclines are abundant. It's essentially a cliff. Everything is up on the cliff.
Over the St. Lawrence River.
Yep. If you're not going up, you're going down.
Yes.
Which can be just as bad as going up sometimes, but we quickly learned that we're gonna have to.
Yeah.
We got acclimated as the days went on, but those first couple of days there was some sore legs and
we were like, no more up.
and some groaning about the staircases, but
back to the walking tour, very informative. You don't get that aspect. You get little details about buildings and streets and monuments there that you might not know just walking by. So highly recommend the walking tour. Yep,
it gives you a lot of the history, and doing it real early in your trip will give you the lay of the land and kind of just here's the highlights, and then over the next few days what do we want to go back and look at and check out, and instead of just looking at something and not fully understanding, like knowing it's something historical, kind of getting a placard kind of view of what that item is. You've got that deeper background. So again, not outrageously expensive. I think it was with the tip, it was about $54 Canadian for both of us to do the walking tour. It was close to 3 hours, I think.
Tips are optional, but accepted. And she did a great job. It brought places to the forefront that we went back to because we had no idea that it was there. And we'll go over that later on.
Yep, so we're a fan of walking tours. We're definitely going to be doing that more as time goes on.
There was another option that we didn't do was the hop on, hop off bus tour. Yep. It takes you to many different places, not just the Old Town area, but we took the walking tour of the Old Town city.
Right. And then the city itself is broken up into sort of two zones, if you will. There's the Old Town, which is sort of down in the lower area of the city, and then there's the upper area where the Château Frontenac is located. And in both those areas, and again, you're walking up and down stairs to get between those two, although there is one other way to get up and down, which is probably the more preferred method that we failed to take on multiple occasions. But that's the Funicular, and the Funicular is pretty cool. It's really old. It's actually, you can see in some of the old infrastructure around the city where it was built in. It's been there for a long time. Funiculars are always a fun part of any city you go visit. And so you got to go ride on it at least once, which of course we did.
And each country calls it a little bit differently.
Yep, but it's a great way. If you have some mobility issues, you certainly can use wheelchairs, and they make accommodations for that, and you can use the funicular to get up and down versus using the stairs and the walkways. Even the walkways are very steep to get from the lower part of the city to the upper part of the city. So, and then there was the Château Frontenac itself.
Yes, very beautiful. You learn the history there. There's a Starbucks there for the modern person.
Yep.
And a lovely ice cream store, best ice cream,
Yep.
soft serve ice cream there.
Yeah, sort of out on the boardwalk there. And then they've got their own little museum, kind of a walking museum of just history of the hotel, some items from the hotel that are there.
When we went in, it was very crowded.
Very crowded.
It was just one of those days that was very crowded, and they were walking through there.
Yep. And located just underneath on the boardwalk area to the front of the Château Frontenac is the Château St. Louis, which is sort of I guess it became the governor's house for the city over time, but it's the old archaeological site. So it's underneath the boardwalk, and it's run by the
Parks Canada, which is their national park system. And our tour guide, I can't remember his name, but he was awesome. Very enthusiastic, loved his job, you could tell. Wealth of information.
And again, on the walking tour, they had pointed out that this little tour is available. And otherwise, it would kind of look like a throwaway kind of tour. It does cost to get into it. It was $17.81 US for both of us for entrance to this, but it's inside, so the walking tour guide had recommended that if you get a little bit of a rainy day or something, that's a good activity for a rainy day, and that's exactly what we did on a kind of rainy day. Was we used that time to go on that tour. But again, something that we typically wouldn't have done is pay for a tour of a place, but in this case, it ended up being really interesting, and all the artifacts and the archaeological history. To kind of give you a better lay of the land and how the buildings were and what they were used for and kind of what was going on in that space throughout history. It was really interesting and really cool.
Yeah. Another place we went to was Quebec City is basically the capital of Quebec. So we also went to the Parliament building, which is interesting because you can go on a tour of the Parliament building. Now we went towards the end of the day, so we didn't get a lot of time, but we were able to go in and check the different levels.
Most important about the Parliament, free.
Free.
And our motto
is
free, it's me.
They do a very thorough security scan though in the beginning,
yes.
But then you get in there and it's free. We have some great pictures and videos from there also. And it's just, an interesting little thing. It's like our Capitol building, getting a tour.
Yep,
of their
very cool
building.
structure, very cool building. And really neat library inside of there.
And the actual rooms.
Yeah, a lot of stained glass in there. So it's a fairly old structure, so a lot of cool stuff in there. So we really enjoyed the Parliament building. Yep. And then there's just shopping in general in the Old Town. There are shops on shops on shops. Christmas shop, pretty typical.
Christmas shop, just a shop of just ornaments and all things Christmas that you can find. That was nice. Also the glass blowing shop, that was nice. Bought a few little items from there. But they actually have glass blowers in the back that you can watch. So there's lots of arts and crafts and fine art in Quebec City, so you can find those shops.
Yeah, the art scene in Quebec City is strong. There are entire alleyways with artisans that are selling paintings and drawings, and some of them are a little mass produced, but then others of them are being done right there on site. And it's clear that there's a strong art scene there. So if you're into the art scene at all, even just casually, there's a little bit for everybody and kind of what your taste might be.
Yeah, and the cafes and restaurants, you won't fall short. There's the second day we went to the Citadel.
Yep, Citadel.
Second day, the Citadel, which is the highest point up there in Quebec City.
So essentially, it's a fort that they built.
Yep, and never been attacked.
Never been attacked. So they put a lot of effort into building this big, cool fort, and then they never had to use it because the war ends.
But it's still active. The governor's house is there. So they do training mostly up there. But we had a tour of that.
We did the tour there as well.
Yes.
Yep. And very interesting. Again, not typically a tour, that you can sort of walk around the outside for free. But then there's a tour available inside, fairly low cost, that you can they'll walk you around the inside, show you all the points of interest, show you where the old,
And you don't want to fall behind because your tour guide will yell at you to stay.
Yeah, because it's an active military base for the 22nd, I believe it's 22nd Regiment, and they are walking around and doing their thing in there. So the tour's everybody's scampering out, but so you got to watch out for that. But a good tour. It was certainly, it's one of the, and they've got some of the best sight lines from in the fort, so you can go up into sort of the tall areas of the fort and overlook the Château Frontenac and the boardwalk and all the cruise ships down on the water.
St. Lawrence River.
Right. So it's kind of a cool little spot.
It's beautiful.
But, yep. So at the end of the day, as we walked around, the big thing I was struck by is, yes, all the trappings of a typical tourist city where it's supported largely by tourism, tons of restaurants. But what you would expect is a lot of overpriced food that's kind of middling and not real good, and the overcrowding and kind of the waiting in lines everywhere to go see attractions and to see things. But what I was struck by was this idea that this is not a facade. This is a very old city. The cobblestones, the high curbs, the architecture of the buildings is very European, about as European as you're going to find in North America. And the food was not overly expensive, and it was absolutely delicious, and the...
Very fresh.
Yes.
You can tell.
Yeah.
And
so in terms of the downtown area, the main sort of attraction point, 100% worth going. It's very close to the United States. If you're in the U.S., it's a fairly easy trip up. If you're in Canada and you haven't swung by there yet, that's probably should be on your bucket list to get over there.
And if you're concerned, because they are French speaking there, they will know usually in the first few seconds of interaction whether you're French speaking or not, and they aren't rude about it. They're very nice, very hospitable.
Well, they all have
You're
they have a
worried
system.
about that,
They have a system for what.
They have French menus and English menus.
Well, and as soon as you walk into a place, they'll generally greet you in French.
Yes.
And then if you stare at them with a terrified look on your face, they will switch into English pretty quick and go, English.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you answer them in French, then they will immediately.
But they're not hostile about it at all.
And my good friend that had suggested going to Quebec had taught me that they don't say oui, as in yes in French, they say ouais. And so the Québécois pronounce it ouais. And so a couple of times I would answer, they would ask a question, I would answer with ouais. And then they would begin speaking French, and then we had to go, whoa, time out. No, I'm just, that's it. That's the depth of my French is way. So, yeah. But overall, again, the main portion of Quebec City was, we found it to be just absolutely charming, has a lot of depth to it. Every day we were able to find new activities that kept us entertained. While there's a lot of just people and at times was crowded, and it has a lot of those tourist trappings, does not impact the overall impression of the city or how you feel. Every day we wanted to get out and try new things. We didn't feel like, oh, here we go, we're standing in line again. It was always like very exciting and ready to rock and roll.
And this wasn't necessarily slow travel, but I could see us staying up there for about a month because there were lots of things that we didn't get to see and didn't get to explore that, would love to next time.
Yep. So while we found that we absolutely loved Quebec and didn't find it to be overly touristy, what are your thoughts on it? Comment down below. Let us know if you visited Quebec City, if you found it to be overly tourist. If you've got a different opinion than us, please let folks know so they can get differing opinions and their thoughts on it.
What you liked in our video. Did you like some of the sites, some of the tours? Let us know.
Yep. And then certainly because we're a new channel, a brand new channel, the best thing you can do if you want to see more content like this going forward and help us get launched into our worldwide travels is hit the like button and subscribe down below. Smash that like button, as the kids like to say. And those things go a long way toward helping us out as we continue to try to improve how we're going to bring all this content to you. So any feedback is greatly appreciated. But until next time, stick around for part 2, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.